What's up, designers, and welcome back to Rempton Games. In today's episode of Evolution of Pokemon Design, we're going to be talking about the brand new Generation 9, better known as Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. As always, we're going to be talking about the common design trends and motifs of this generation, how the new mechanics and themes of these games influence these designs, and how Generation 9 differs from previous games. Today's video will be focused on Generation 9 and will not be talking about the new Pokemon introduced in Pokemon Legends Arceus, but let me know if you'd like me to make a mini video about those in the future. Also, I will be talking about all areas of the new games, including new Pokemon, plot, characters, etc., so if you haven't finished playing it, you might want to come back and watch this video later. Without further ado, let's get started. Let's start by talking about the new region where these games take place, as that tends to have a major influence on the designs of the Pokemon found there. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet take place in the Paldean region, which is based on the Iberian Peninsula, although it also takes some inspiration from former Spanish and Portuguese colonies in North and South America, such as Mexico and Brazil. This inspiration greatly influenced the general shape of the region, as well as a lot of the clothing and architecture that you can see throughout the game. It also influenced the design of several Pokemon in the region, although the cultural theming isn't as pervasive as some of the previous generations have been. Some examples include the Smoliv family, because Spain is the world's largest producer of olives, the Mastiff line, which is based on the Spanish Mastiff, Capsicid and Scovillain are based on chili peppers, which are commonly used in Spanish cuisine, and of course the various breeds of toros, which reference traditional Spanish bullfighting, matadors, and Pamplona's running of the bulls. As with Generation 8, the starters of this region are also influenced by the cultural inspiration for the games. Skeledirge seems to be based on Mexican calaveras, or sugar skulls, associated with the Dia de Muertos celebration. Meowscarada seems to be based on a combination of masquerades and Puss in Boots, which was originally an Italian fairy tale, but I guess they were inspired by the Shrek version. Finally, Quequavel seems to be inspired by traditional Spanish dances such as the Paso Doble and flamenco, although he looks most similar to Brazilian samba dancers. Besides the cultural influences, it's kinda hard to say what really sets the Pokemon of this generation apart from previous Pokemon, at least when it comes to the normal Pokemon of the Paldean region. I suppose it was inevitable after 9 generations and over 25 years, but it really seems like Pokemon is beginning to settle into a more consistent style. Most of the Pokemon in this generation have big heads with large round eyes, and tend to have very round body shapes in general. Overall, Pokemon seems to have moved away from the more rugged, naturalistic textures that defined the early generations, and is focusing more on smooth, rounded features. Also, this may be more of a rendering thing than a design thing, but these rounded features, in addition to the texture of the Pokemon, make it almost feel like they're all sculpted out of clay in these new games. One notable thing is that Generation 9 does not continue with some of the more unique design conventions of Generation 8, most of which I wasn't too fond of to begin with. Gen 8, for example, had a tendency to try to over-concept its Pokemon, trying to throw a bunch of ideas into a single design. The classic example of this is Dragapult, which has to resemble its biological inspiration while conveying Ghost type, because it's based on an extinct animal, while also resembling a modern stealth bomber and using its pre-evolved forms as missiles. Gen 9 seems to have backed off on this a bit, with each Pokemon only having 1 or 2 main concepts. And, to its credit, while Gen 9 does have a few designs that I would describe as basically just a blank, like Flamigo or Bramblin, they're much rarer this time around. In addition to the normal Pokemon of the Paldean region, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet also introduce a new type of Pokemon, Paradox Pokemon, which come from a different time. In Pokemon Scarlet, these Pokemon are all primitive ancestors of modern Pokemon, whereas in Pokemon Violet, they're all futuristic robotic versions of those Pokemon. Each of these categories share a number of common design traits. All past Pokemon are larger than their regular counterparts, and often have yellow and red angry eyes, long unkempt hair, spikes, and lizard-like tails. The future forms, on the other hand, all have a metallic sheen, often having glowing portions that resemble an LED screen, are more angular, and have visible body segments. I'll admit, my feelings about these Paradox Pokemon are mixed and mostly negative. I'm not a big competitive battler, but they do all at least seem pretty strong. On the other hand, I hate the naming convention, and I wish they were just considered forms of the older Pokemon. It just seems so lazy to slap a metallic texture on a Tyranitar and say it's an entirely new Pokemon. In addition to the Paradox forms and the regional forms, which have become standard at this point, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet also introduce new Convergent evolution Pokemon. These are Pokemon that look extremely similar to a pre-existing Pokemon, but are technically unrelated, such as Toedscool and Tentacool. Similar to the Paradox Pokemon, I honestly have no idea why Game Freak decided to treat Toedscool and Wiglet as new Pokemon rather than being regional forms of the pre-existing Pokemon. It honestly feels very arbitrary to me. The inclusion of the Paradox Pokemon implies a larger past and future or tradition versus technology theme, although the games don't really do too much with this. Playing devil's advocate, however, there are some aspects of the games that could be seen as playing into these themes. On the past side, the Pokemon of this generation are much more connected to previous Pokemon than most of the recent generations have been. You could argue since any generation since Gen 4. In addition to the many new forms of old Pokemon, or brand new Pokemon that should have been new forms, this is the first generation since Generation 6 to introduce new evolutions of existing Pokemon. With an Aneurysm, Queen's Gambit, and the Dunsparce evolution everyone has been waiting for over 20 years, slightly bigger Dunsparce. In addition, the Treasures of Ruin legendary Pokemon are all ancient treasures that have been sealed away for 1,000 years, which could be further evidence for the past theme. For the future theme, the evidence is a bit more scarce. The game does experiment with new technologies on a meta level by making this the first open world game in the series, at least theoretically, and by adding textures to the Pokemon. One of the gym leaders is also a streamer, so that's something. Most of the futuristic stuff in the game happens after you've completed your 3 main quest lines and ventured down into the mysterious Area Zero. Here, you discover that your game's version of the bisexual dilemma has actually been an artificial intelligence the whole time, and invented a time machine to bring these Paradox Pokemon to the modern time. This section has a lot of technology that we might consider to be futuristic, although given that time machines have canonically existed in Pokemon since Generation 2, I'm not sure how futuristic it really is. Overall, if you're interested in exploring a Pokemon region that explores the themes of past and future, then I would highly recommend the Maza region from the channel Subjectively, which I think does a much better job. The final group of Pokemon we'll be looking at today are the legendary Pokemon of these regions, of which we have 2 different sets. The first set are the cover legendaries, Koraidon and Miraidon. Giving credit where it's due, I think both of these Pokemon have pretty cool designs, looking impressive and powerful. My main problem with these legends is that the games don't really make them feel special at all. You basically get them for free right at the beginning of the game, and for most of the game they fill the role of a lowly HM slave. They also don't really have any cool legends about them or embody natural phenomenon such as the land, sea, and sky, time and space, or the sun and moon. They're just past and future forms of a Pokemon that modern people ride like a bike. None of the other Paradox Pokemon are considered legendary, so I'm not really sure why it's the case for these 2. The other set of legends are much more interesting in my opinion. They're all ancient cursed or possessed artifacts that were sealed away thousands of years ago, and you have to unseal them by pulling out a bunch of black glowing stakes that are scattered throughout the region. Each one consists of an ancient treasure, which is its true body, and a false body that it makes for itself out of various materials: snow, grass, ground, or fire. Design-wise, they're all very different from each other, but are unified by the fact that they're all partially man-made objects and partially made of natural materials, which is pretty unique. Mechanically, these games actually make some pretty major changes to the standard Pokemon formula. The games are now a seamless open world where you can theoretically go anywhere or accomplish objectives in whatever order you choose. Do I think they actually handled the open world concept very well? Not really, but that's a topic for a different video. They've also completely removed random tall grass encounters and forced trainer battles, which means you now no longer have to battle unless you choose to, or when you accidentally run into one of the 10 million microscopic Pokemon that surround you at any given moment. In addition to the normal gym challenge, these games also introduce 2 brand new quest lines for the players to complete. One where you go around attacking Team Star bases with the new auto battle mechanic, and another where you have to fight off these gigantic Titan Pokemon, which are basically the totem Pokemon from Generation 7, but shh, don't tell anyone. Another technological upgrade that Pokemon made this generation were improvements to their texturing and lighting. While this is mostly pretty subtle, all of the Pokemon do have different textures. Some have slight fur textures, while others have scales, but this is most noticeable with metallic, glowing, and transparent textures. As with any advances in Pokemon technology, these improved textures bring with them the possibility of new Pokemon designs. And I think Game Freak took advantage of this in a couple of different ways. First, the Paradox Pokemon, especially the futuristic forms, really show off the new metallic and glowing surfaces that are possible. Both of the cover legendary Pokemon also have a very interesting mix of textures and materials in their designs. Game Freak also shows off this new technology with their new battle mechanic, Terastallization. Terastallization is the new battle mechanic introduced this generation. Each Pokemon has a Terra type, and when they Terastallize, they become that type, completely replacing whatever types they previously were, although they do still get a stab bonus for moves of those types. Visually, Terastallization is very impressive. The Pokemon transforms into a cool, crystalline version of itself that refracts light like a prism, and they get a cool new hat. Design-wise, however, there isn't much to say about Terastallization, as unlike Mega Pokemon or Gigantamax, Terastallization works the same for every Pokemon and there are no unique forms, at least for now. However, Generation 9 is just getting started and we'll probably see some major DLCs over the next couple years, just like we did with Pokemon Sword and Shield. These DLCs will hopefully explain more about Terastallization, Area Zero, and the Paradox Pokemon, in addition to probably introducing a few new Pokemon of their own. However, until then, I would like to hear your thoughts about the Pokemon of this generation. Because it's still pretty new, I haven't had as much time to really study and digest the new designs, so there's probably plenty of things that I missed. If so, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this in the future. If you like game design, make sure to check out the rest of the videos on this channel, as well as the Rempton Games blog, which will be linked in the description. And join me next time for my ultimate risk strategy guide. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.